June can be a very productive month for largemouth bass fishing. A lot of the fish, at least around here in Northeast Ohio, they started spawning at the beginning of April. And so now here in June, we're talking about catching post-spawn bass. So what this means that bass are going to be feeding and recuperating after the spawn. Makes sense. They just spent a bunch of time and energy spawning. And so now they are on the hunt. And to be completely honest with you, it makes them a little bit more aggressive and less choosy on what they're going to eat. Really good for you and me. So what are the bass doing? So typically the females will leave the nest first and head towards deeper water. So if you know where the beds are in your particular body of water, take a look to the left, look to the right, left, right, switch for you. Anyways, and look for the closest structure or cover you can, and likely that's where the big girls will be hiding. The males, however, will stick around and guard the fry for a week or two. So if you look down and you see some fry around, usually there is a male nearby. So I'm gonna share with you the lures that are best for June and how you can slay those largemouth bass. Let's hop into number one, the NEKO rig. All right, this right here is one of my favorites for June. If you're fishing heavily pressured lakes or those bass are finicky, try out the NEKO. All you need is a 5-inch worm, a nail weight. Here's the thing, I don't buy nail weights because they're expensive. They're like 50 cents each. So I buy these guys, number 6, 1/2-inch panhead Phillips sheet metal screws. Instead of paying freaking 50 cents per nail weight, just go ahead, take the screw, literally screw it, and boom. There you have it. Well, this thing will sink right to the bottom. You can also use 9 30-second panhead screws as well. But essentially what you do is you hook it like a wacky rig. So we'll go ahead and take these Mustad hooks here. These are 2/0 beak hooks. And what you're going to do is simply hook it like you would a wacky worm. Man, I just caught a giant pig on this past week. So just toss it out, let it hit the bottom, right? And then you can do a couple different things with it. You can kind of pop it back, and it'll kind of pop on the bottom there, which is nice. You could drag it back, or you can simply work it like a shaky head, where you dance the slack line to kind of make it wobble. So keep an eye out for your line, right? Because you're gonna be fishing the bottom, and likely those bass are gonna hit. It's gonna move to the left, or it's gonna move to the right, or they're gonna come towards you. It's not gonna hit like a wacky worm hit. And sometimes, just by looking at your line, you're like, oh, it's taking off to the right, set that hook. A little trick here, if you're fishing the NEKO shallow from your kayak, the bass, once you set the hook, are likely to be running to deep water, so be ready to pick up line really fast. The rod and reel I use for these, I usually fish the NEKO on my Impulse 7-foot finesse rod with an 8-pound fluorocarbon. I use Seaguar and VizX line. I tie it on with a Palomar knot. But this guy right here is deadly in June. All right, let's go on to lure number 2. These guys right here, the jig or extra wide gap jig, which I'll share in just a moment. But I love the jig so much because I have caught my biggest bass last year off the jig. And not just like, hey, I caught one. I mean, multiple bass. Big ones. Up here, you got 5-6 pounders, you got 20, 22-inch bass, and the jig is what picked them up. So typically what I will throw is a 3/8 ounce jig with some type of missile D-bomb kind of trailer. As you can see there, they love this around here. I also do custom pours of my own trailers. See a variety of different colors there, so I use these. But the jig absolutely slays. Let me show you how to work it. So I'm typically reaching for my jig setup where I see deep structure or places where I know I'm gonna get my exposed hook presentations caught up. And in open water, when I locate brush piles or tires, etc. I like bringing out the jig in shallow water, I like skipping underneath docks. Really, there isn't many places I'm not gonna throw this lure. It is just so effective at catching big fish. Now I will say, I used to hate the jig, but find yourself a 3/8 ounce jig and a green pumpkin trailer and you will be good to go. There's also the extra wide gap jig. Check this out. So a lot of times, obviously, let's have these weed guards, but this is an extra wide gap. And so you don't need the weed guard, which is kind of nice. So even a more effective weedless presentation. So my setup for the jig is gonna be 2 things. I got 20-pound fluorocarbon if I'm fishing open water. I have 65-pound braid for heavy cover presentations. And I'm gonna be throwing my jigs on my Impulse 7-foot, 4-inch, extra heavy, extra fast casting rod. All right, lure number 3. If you watch this channel, it's not gonna be a surprise at all. It is the wacky rigged Senko, the wacky rigged worm. And the guys, I love this lure because it catches me monster bass and bass in numbers and really helps me locate them. And here, you might be thinking, hey, everybody uses the wacky rig Senko. I'm gonna share an email I just got this morning. It's wild. Hey Daren, got my kayak finally this evening and took it out for an hour or so and fished the wacky rig for the first time ever skipping docks. Caught 3 largemouth, one was a real nice one, possibly a PB, but I didn't have my scale to measure. Anyways, it's thanks to you for sharing about the wacky rig that gave me the confidence and basic knowledge to give it a try and find success. I can't wait to do more. Guys, I'm telling you, check this bass out that I caught. Nice pig, yes. So, If you haven't used the Wacky rig, this is going to be an effective bait for you. So for the Wacky worm, really simple. I have about 500 of these worms that I made this past winter because I love this lure so much. So we're gonna take your 2/0 kind of circle type hook, go right to the inside of the clitellum and just run it straight through just like that. Now, as you can see, I pour my own colors. However, if you're looking for a bargain worm, the Yum Dingers would be your best bet. If you're looking for a worm that has a sick wobble and a fall that the bass simply can't resist, the Yamamoto Senko is what you're looking for. If I'm just out messing around, I use my private stash. If I'm fishing a tournament, I will use the Senko from Yamamoto's. There's a noticeable difference for catch rate for me. I'm typically going to be throwing the Wacky rig on a 7-foot finesse rod, fluorocarbon line from Seagar and Vizex, Palomar knot, and enjoy all the bass you are going to slay with this lure. Now, typically you won't throw the Wacky worm in anything deeper than 5 feet. If I'm going deeper than 5 feet, I'm going to throw a nail weight in the end and fish it NEKO style, but really great for the edge of lily pads, skipping under docks, casting shallow to shore. The retrieve is pretty easy too, right? It's the first lure my 2 kids, 6 and 8, Mercy and River, caught their first bass on. You go tug, 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 pause, tug, 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 pause. The bass will likely hit it on the pause. Also, if you haven't caught a bass within the first 5 series of tugs and pauses, I would reel it in and target another area, right? Your likelihood of catching a bass goes significantly down after 5 tugs and pauses, and you will increase the likelihood of catching if you target another area. All right, let's move on to the next lure. This is a YAMATANUKI. This lure right here is freaking sick. On a hot, hot, hot lure in Japan right now. Check that out. Looks like a freaking bowling pin. This thing slayed over 200 bass for me last year. Let me show you how to rig it up and how to fish it. It comes in a 3.5 inch, which you're looking at, and a 2.5 inch. Now they come in 8 colors, but the green pumpkin black fleck has been performing for me all last summer. So I'll be throwing the links to all these below. This actually came in a pack, which is really nice. These things are so stupid, right? Looks like a bowling pin. And people have referred to it as a power Ned, but I don't think that's an accurate description. There's no weighted jig head, and it falls completely different. The weight of this bad boy is 5/8 of an ounce, and the weight of the 2.5 is a 1/4 ounce. So how I rig this up is I rig up the 3.5 incher, this guy, on the Gamakatsu 5/0 hook. So what you do is just run it through the top, out to the side like so, bring it down and around, find the back end, and boom, kind of hides it nice down there. And whenever the bass hit, you see the hook, this depresses, leaving the hook out, and boom, this is such an effective bait. Now I've watched a bunch of other videos and where they tout a 3 and 4/0 hooks. I would believe that would be a mistake. That's a lot of plastic to move out of the way. So grab yourself a 5/0 stout hook and you're gonna get a bigger hookup ratio because that's just a ton of plastic to move. So what you'll find out is after using this bunch, this will rip out right here. And so what you do is just take the hook out, flip it around to the other side, and you get kind of a double life out of this bad boy. Now, if you want to get some extra life after they rip out of the top, you could literally bite off the top here and it makes like a 2.5 incher and you can run a smaller hook through it. But keep in mind, make sure you have a cup of coffee nearby because these things are salty, or you can just use scissors like a normal human being. I run like 17-ish pound fluorocarbon on this. Once again, Seagar and Vizex. And I'm running this typically on a medium power fast action rod, 7 to 7.3, and a 7.5 to 1 gear ratio on the reel. It's because a lot of times you got to pick up line really fast. You can use 15 pound, you can use 20 pound line, but I like right in between there as the sweet spot. All right, now they have it set up. There's 5 different ways you can fish this. You can skip it. This bait skips really well when you see that tree or the overhanging of the water's edge. Just skip this bad boy under there. You pick up a lot of bass that way. You can fish steep structure, right? This thing has a sick fall rate. Kind of does this, and its bass just lose their ever-loving mind. Another way I like to fish is to fish it from shore, right? You throw this out toward the shore like you would a frog and just popping this thing out. And the tail on the end of this YAMATANUKI makes this bait erratic, kind of skitters through the water, and with some short snaps of your rod tip, it looks awesome. Another thing to do is if you're not getting any bites, kind of just speed reel it through the water and right, I don't know, 10 feet off your kayak, whatever you're fishing, stop. And a lot of times if something is following it and this thing stops, they just essentially just open their mouth and gobble it, man. This thing is great. I love fishing it around here because the YAMATANUKI, especially in June, kind of looks like a small bluegill, right? And there's a bluegill spawn in June here in Ohio. So this is why I break this lure out in June. I also will throw this on top of lily pads. I have some pretty thick pads here, anywhere from 3 to 4 feet of clear water underneath. So I was playing around with my frog, was not cutting it. And so this will go in, fall in between the lily pads, and you just kind of pop it through. And I tell you what, drives the bass absolutely freaking crazy. Now, if you're looking to get a fish or two more out of this bait, I would put some super glue on the offset bend right here. And that might give you a few extra fish, save a little money, so keep that in mind for you. So on a hot bite day, I've gone through an entire bag, 8 of these guys. The next lure I have for you in June is the Roland Martin helicopter lure. Now I'm just kidding. Put this thing away. It's actually this guy right here, absolutely sick, the Z-Man Pop Frogs. And this thing, look at that. Oh, I use it as a subsurface frog. Let me walk you through how I fish it and how you can slay some bass on this delicious lure. This is a fun topwater bite right now. It's my favorite frog to use, so if you're looking to get into some topwater frog fishing, this would be a great gateway frog. It's a bit different than your hollow-bodied frogs, which I also have a bunch of. Well, let me show you how to rig this up, where to fish it, and how to fish it. So let's start with the most basic rigging of this bad boy. There's a bunch of ways you can rig it to fish lower in the water column, but by its design, it was designed to push water on the top. As you can see, it's got a cupped lip here, and so you'll be using a basic EWG 3/0 to 5/0. I'm going to be using the 5/0 just like you would on your YAMATANUKI, and you can just run this bad boy. Oh man, looks like I do like that, run it around and pop this through the back, and it will sit right in that little hold that they created for it. And you can just pop this thing on the water, and the bass absolutely lose their ever-loving mind on this. Now, with most frog fishing, you're going to want to use braided line, right? So I use 50-pound braid, Power Pro, and I'm fishing it on a medium-heavy power rod. And so where do you fish this thing? Now, there's 2 reasons I'm reaching out behind me to grab this pop frogs out of my kayak crate. So grass and vegetation where you can throw this over top of, that will slay them, or between the lily pads. Now the beauty of this frog, it's made with this elastic material that Z-Man is known for. Pro tip, don't store these lures with other lures. The Z-Man plastics will melt. And if you store your white lures with your green lures, they will leach in a couple hours. So if you never used this bait before, the elastic is extremely buoyant, which brings me to how to use and fish the pop frogs. Now, a lot of guys don't like the Z-Man plastics. They're pretty light, making accuracy and distance a problem. Also, with the long legs on the pop frogs, it makes skipping this bait very difficult. Now, if you've ever been frog fishing with hollow body frogs, the hookup ratio, especially if you're new, is difficult to master. This is why I like this frog, especially if you're new to topwater frog fishing, because you're only trying to bury 1 hook, right? Not trying to bury 2 hooks like you have in a topwater frog. So this is why I like this particular frog, especially starting out if you're new or a beginner. I also like it because this plastic is super squishy, making it really easy for that bass to get the entire thing in its mouth. So even though it's weightless presentation, and it's why it was designed really is to push water, that's not how I prefer to fish this. I prefer to fish it with a weighted hook. This is the weighted hook that I like to use, the Gamakatsu 4/0, and this is a weighted Superline EWG. Let me take one out for you and kind of show you what I'm talking about. As you can see, it is weighted mid-shank. So what I'll do, hook this guy up, and the beauty about Elastec is that it's going to easily go through that weight without tearing up your plastic. As you can see, of course, flip it back around, run that 4/0 through the bottom, and boom, there you have it. So why I love the pop frogs, especially the weighted hook, is 1, you're gonna get more distance and accuracy because you got the weighted hook. Also, when this thing hits the water, it's gonna start slowly falling through the water, and these legs are gonna move around and just drive those bass crazy. I'm gonna throw the link to both of these in the description below. Have fun frog fishing, folks, in June. The next lure I have for you, if you love a topwater blow up, you're gonna love the Z-Man finesse frogs. These guys right here. These things are awesome. I'm gonna show you how to hook them up and how to fish them and where to fish them so you can get a lot of bites. Start with the rigging. Now this is the finesse bait, right, which has a scaled down version of the hard leg frogs that Z-Man also makes. So it's essentially the same design but smaller, and it's made with that very buoyant Elastec material, right? So the finesse frog comes in 6 colors right now, and just shy of 3 inches, it'll run you around $4 to $5 for a pack of these. Now the hook you'll need is a 2/0 EWG hook. So let's go ahead and open this up, and just like the other baits, we'll go ahead and run this through the top, out the bottom, just like so. Run that all the way up to the offset bend so it kind of sits in there nicely. And take this on the back side, pop it through the bottom, and it'll sit down in there just like it was designed to. This is a lighter lure, right? The hook is the heaviest thing here. So in order for you to cast this any significant distance, you're gonna need to use light tackle. Now, where do you fish this bad boy? I'm gonna be fishing, since it's smaller in design, the best place to utilize finesse frogs is gonna be your ponds, your streams, your small creeks, above your high grass, between the lily pads. Throw them to shore and burn them out. But to be honest, I pull this out on big lakes as well. I had the most luck in the mornings and evenings when fishing the pot frogs. Now, there's a few ways you can retrieve this bad boy for that reaction bite. I prefer burning it. These legs are gonna go absolutely crazy, and if you're a power fisherman, like being on the move, then this might be the right option for you. This lure was actually designed primarily to be burned, in my opinion. The twin paddle legs creates a nice bubble action that's gonna get the attention of that bass. Once again, pro tip here, vary your burn speeds to dial in what they want. But if the bass aren't liking the burn, I have luck with a more patient approach of casting it out and then working it back like you would a normal frog over the pads and just letting it sit in those holes. Pop, 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 sit, pop, 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 sit. So great for bass, which I catch them with. According to Z-Man, you can catch southern Saratoga, mangrove jack, barra, and more. Now, there's other ways to rig this as well. You can add some weight to it. You can hook a 2/0 weighted hook on it if you wanted to, and get some greater casting distance and lower this in the water column. And the last lure I'm gonna share with you is this guy right here, the 8-inch mag draft, or the Berkeley call shad. These things are massive, but man, they pick up some big bites. Instead of running you through how to use these right now, I recently created a video how to fish the 6, 8, and 10-inch mag draft, and you can check that video out right there. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck out there in June. See ya.